How would you feel about school taking up an extra hour every day to teach basic adult stuff like washing clothes, basic cooking, paying taxes? My rural school did this in the 2000s. Home economic class, sewing, taxes, cooking, woodworking, etc. Could even get into metalworking, accounting, quilting, pottery, etc. if you wanted to. I'd be opposed to the extra hour. But not the activities. School was already an 8-hour-a-day thing, pushing it up to 9 hours means it actually becomes longer than a full-time job. And that's before you get to homework and stuff like that. My school had a class like that. Most of the classmates didn't pay attention and now complain 10 years later that they never learned about taxes and credit card interest. Also, some parents were super upset about the school overstepping their boundaries by teaching basic budgeting. I can't imagine that situation has gotten any better in the last 10 years. I'm not against the class being taught, but at the end of the day you have to realize that all that stuff is easily learned once you are an adult with just a minimum amount of research. If someone isn't taking the 15 minutes it takes to learn how to wash their clothes properly or watch a YouTube video for a basic recipe as an adult, when they actually need to do those things to function, no way in hell as a teen would they pay attention to a class that tried to teach them that. It's still a good idea to have the class, but it isn't some magical fix everyone seems to think it is. I am against the adding an extra hour on top of regular school though. Schools have these already and the kids in them don't care. It's not immediately relevant to their lives so they don't pay attention. Sort of like if I were to talk to you about the do's and don'ts of denture cream. You say, I'll figure it out later when I need to know it and stop paying attention. I've taught in several schools that have tried to teach social skills, kindness, meditation, financial literacy, etc. In every case, the kids did not care. It was their least favorite part of the day because it felt like a waste of time. The point of education is to teach thinking, not doing. A well-educated student can teach themselves these things. A quick Google search can teach you how to file taxes, cook, etc. but you can't Google how to do Algebra 2 and expect to understand what you read without some background in the subject matter. I hear arguments like this post all the time, and I think the real issue is people not taking responsibility. I can't cook? That must be the school's fault. We need education reform. No, it's not the school's fault. It's your fault. You could literally Google a recipe in 20 seconds. Stop blaming other people for your problems. People don't realize that the point of education isn't to teach facts, but the change of your brain. For example, physics and math majors earn the highest scores in the MCAT, GMAT, and LSAT. It's not because they learned those things in class, but because their curriculum emphasizes logical thinking. When students slack in schoolwork, they're not just missing out on the opportunity to know stuff, they're missing out on the opportunity to be smarter. My public school had classes that teach these things. I graduated high school a decade ago. I took home economics and learned how to cook. I took financial literacy to learn about taxes and budgeting and investing. Is Utah just way ahead of the other states or is this a made-up issue? I've seen people that took these classes at my school and then post memes about not learning how to pay taxes and shit. I wonder if the real problem is that nobody remembers this stuff because they teach it to you when it isn't relevant to your life. I think that they already waste enough time and it would be worse for kids whose parents already taught them that stuff. Washing clothes is really a 20-minute lesson, and cooking/taxes have their own elective classes already. Your grandparents had home economics classes for the girls and shop classes, trades, for the boys. Every once in a while a member of the opposite sex would sign up for and take the wrong class, too much humor. They don't teach home economics or have shop classes anymore? This used to be called home economics and most schools had it. Then boomers did away with it because it cost too much. Now they make fun of young people for not knowing things they would have learned in home economics. Washing clothes? So you put the clothes in, some detergent, push a button, then dryer, then a hanger? If you can't figure out washing clothes or cooking on your own, definitely shouldn't be allowed to drive. Taxes, debt and personal finance is something that should be taught. I am opposed to it. There's no reason parents can't teach these things to their kids while doing said tasks. School isn't responsible for every single thing. Also, with the internet, if a parent doesn't know, changing a tire, for example, they can easily learn. This is all stuff anyone would be able to get info online or ask somebody at home. Hey, Mom, how do you write a check? Boil an egg? Change a tire? Get your prescriptions filled? It boggles the mind that kids would be willing to sit their butt in a chair at school for hours to passively listen to this, while adulting simply means that you take the time to look it up yourself and learn on your own. Since you are adulting, you get to decide how much time you want to spend on any of these things. Learning to cook does not mean you have to become a chef, it just means you can feed yourself reasonably nutritious food that you enjoy eating. You can go all out and learn to bake a fancy quiche if you enjoy it, or just learn to fry a couple of eggs in 2 minutes. You decide, and have the power over how you want to feed yourself. It's okay if you don't want to learn to do your taxes, although if you only have one job and don't have properties or business, it can be so straightforward that it's probably worth learning to do on your own in a couple of hours. There's no need to buy a sewing machine to alter your clothes unless you think you would enjoy it as a permanent hobby, but anyone can spend a couple of dollars on a cheap sewing kit and look up how to sew a button. Because it only takes a few minutes and it does come in handy. Totally fine to wait until your button falls off. There are no prescribed items you must know to be an adult, you just have to do the best you can with what you have, and that often means learning something new on your own when needed, and you get to decide how to do it. Here's the deal about the whole paying taxes thing. It changes every single year. By design, taxes are hard. They don't need to be. But they are. Teach critical thinking and reading comprehension instead. Dude, they already teach math and how to read directions. Plus you have the entire human knowledge at your fingertips. How about we don't waste precious time walling people through basic stuff they have already been taught the foundations of and spend more time on teaching more complex ideas/skills that can't be quickly learned by reading short directions. Sorry if this comes off sounding mean, but it is so ridiculous to ask what you did. Nope. Parents have to take some responsibility for having kids, too. Also, cooking has largely been dropped from curriculums mainly because of the danger in it. Kid drops chicken on the dirty floor and picks it up quickly? Kid knocks boiling water off the stove? Schools would be sued quite quickly. Tax, yeah. But wouldn't it be better to teach kids about how governments use their tax? I think it's ridiculous that washing clothes and basic cooking would be considered adult stuff. These are all things I learned at home and was doing for myself by high school. Are people's parents really just doing all this for them? Japanese schools do this to a degree. The students are responsible for cleaning the classroom and serving lunch to their classmates. I think it would be a great idea if well explained and supported by the community. Otherwise, the school risks parents going bananas, think Karens and who knows what. These are things that can be learned independently by simply doing them. Taxes are damned near idiot-proof in most cases because they are designed to be. Washing clothes, follow the instruction manual. Cooking? Watch YouTube, follow a recipe. What these all have in common is that you need a solid grasp on numeracy and literacy. These are things that must be explicitly taught. These are the core skills that underpin almost everything. People who complain about not being taught how to do their taxes tend to have bad numeracy skills. People who struggle to fill out a form tend to have bad literacy. Can't read instructions? Literacy issue. You can make education as practical as possible, but the fact is, many don't want to learn, until it's too late. I say this as a teacher, we really do a lot to make education as relevant to real-world needs as possible, but there is not getting around the fact that a person must learn to be fluent in both reading and writing, as well as be able to think mathematically to cope in the real world. The rest of what we do is for the purpose of teaching you how to learn effectively, how to think in different ways, how to adapt to unfamiliar challenges, and how to deal with abstract ideas. We don't teach the model of the atom because you need to know where the electrons go. We teach you so that you can learn how to grasp concepts that are not directly observable, make logical conclusions from them, and apply abstract ideas to real-world phenomena. The actual topics are just vehicles for these skills. We had industrial arts, home economics, consumer economics, and adult living as required classes in middle school and high school. It was great. I remember doing a project on generic versus name brand products. In the end, though, we could have used ongoing classes that teach how to fix household electronics, how to take care of a home, etc. I really love the Korean and Japanese practices of having school children take care of their schools. They don't have janitors. All school children are required to do these tasks. Well, my kids learn that at home. I did not learn anything at home but taught myself. I didn't have much education either due to neglect. I needed to learn, and for the most part if you can read instructions then you can do it. Today there is YouTube and such as well. I'm not sure why people can't do laundry or cook if they can read. I'm thinking also, my kids all took home economics, sewing, etc., so isn't it already there? So my first thought is it would be a really boring class for some that don't need it, but an easy credit and helpful for those that do. An extra hour of their time every day adds up though, and not worth it if not needed. I'm also thinking since we moved to a different state, the education here is shockingly terrible. We've been blown away at the lack of education and efforts to push kids through the system at all costs. My son came home laughing on his first day because tests here aren't actually tests. The teacher shares the answers when someone raises their hand. It's crazy. My daughter had an assignment on her third day here regarding a subject she had no knowledge of because she entered midterm and should have failed or had to redo it after studying because she only got a 56 on it. The teacher gave her a B with some story about knowing half of it anyway. That's not right. She doesn't learn the subject if she's being pushed through. Something needs to be done, but I don't have any answers. I'm so concerned about kids growing up in this type of school system. They can barely read. Maybe that's half the problem right there. It's so funny how many of you think that kids will actually be interested in learning about taxes, stocks, etc. In what world do you think high schoolers would be attentive in a class about budgeting/taxes? Have any of you met high school kids before? Definitely not. The school day is long enough already, and it would be very costly to add another hour. Some sort of home economics should be available as an elective class. But there are lots of kids that learn the basic skills from their parents. For kids who have been doing laundry, cooking and so on for years as regular chores, it would be so frustrating and wasteful to sit through a mandatory class on that. I do agree that some basic money management skills should be taught, but that can be done in math class. I remember calculating interest and keeping a pretend budget as homework. I'm pretty frustrated by the amount of people that don't understand that school isn't supposed to spoon-feed you every piece of information you'll need as an adult, but instead is supposed to teach you to learn, think critically and logically, and be resourceful, among many other things to help you help yourself. If anything, it's just the over-focus on testing that causes this kind of learning to take the back burner to instead teach how to take some dumb tests that don't even assess these abilities. How about teaching financial literacy and media literacy? In today's world, it would do wonders for society if the next generation could avoid taking on too much debt and buying into garbage news and conspiracy theories. Just imagine. Good idea, but there's probably some unnecessary stuff they could work around for basic life skills instead of adding the hour. Opposed. 1 hour every day for 4 years, 8, or 12, is just way too damn effing high. How about it as a mandatory elective and you take 2 of them in high school totaling 1 year? I did woodshop, mechanical design, architecture, art, and economics as electives. Just remove 2 of those and you can add home life understanding or some stuff. Also, people mention home economics. I had that and it was stupid as hell. We in the course of 5 months made crappy cookies, and a gingerbread house. No really, that is it. Literally October to December was a gingerbread house. I have no clue how, but it is true. High school, 8 classes a day for 4 years, 1. English with 1 year foreign language, 2. Science with 1 year of either engineering or programming, 3. History with 1 year of civics and law, 4. Math with 1 year of financial and business management, 5. Gym with 1 year divided into first aid, sex ed, drug and alcohol awareness, and diet and nutrition, 6. Art, 7. Study period, 8. Lunch. I would also support any student who wants to be allowed to test out of a class. If parents want their kid to sit out of sex ed, then that child would need to take the sex ed final and test out. If the kid already speaks a second language at home, then they could take that language final, prove they know at least a year's worth, and test out. No reason to teach kids stuff they already know. They don't get credits, but they do free up that period to take whatever other class they want. No one would pay attention. Do you really think teenagers would actually want to stay longer in school when it already takes up half of their day to learn something they usually don't have to do themselves for many more years to come? The cry of "I wish school taught me that" is only bad hindsight of people that didn't take the time to learn it themselves or from someone. What's worse is that many schools actually offer courses like budgeting, cooking and home services, to not call it chores, to teach exactly that. Guess who takes these extracurricular activities? That's right, it's not those who end up complaining about it on the internet because they never A, tried and B, looked around outside of their immediate comfort zone that was the decision-making of their guardian or their friends. When I was in school 30 years ago, these were classes for credit. I took sewing in middle school and learned how to balance a checkbook. Before debit cards, you wrote checks and had to track this stuff yourself on paper, and negotiate for a used car and economics. There were cooking classes too, but I didn't take those because I cooked at home. Nobody took these too serious, though. In my school, these were the classes people got put in when they couldn't pass the math and science classes. That's already a thing where I grew up, Sweden. It's called hemkunskap, which translates to home knowledge. You learn how to cook, clean, manage a household budget, nutrition, and how to fix things around the house. Honestly, I think some of these can't/shouldn't be taught like you teach math or a language. Those are systems. Doing laundry is basic rule application, i.e. it says what to do and not to do on the tag and you just execute it. Also, how would you teach washing? Every machine looks different. Same for taxes, although they like to phrase the rules in a confusing way. In my opinion, it is more important to give kids the competence to look information up on their own, which is probably not an easy thing to do but a necessary skill in the information age. Throughout life, there are so many challenges you can't possibly be prepared for all of them simply by learning them by heart. If you want to prepare kids for life, teach them how to solve their own problems. I'm sure it's been mentioned, but we used to have classes for this. I don't mean just at my school. Until the 70s everyone took civics, health, and home economics. This covered pretty much everything a high schooler needed to exist as an adult. Though sometimes just girls took home economics while the boys took shop or mechanics, as men were still expected to work while the wife stayed home. Then in the 80s this all went away, usually due to budget cuts. But at one time, this was all a normal part of high school. There were classes. Typically civics and health were mandatory. Often health was tied to gym class. Health covered hygiene, sex ed, basic first aid, etc. Home economics was simple cooking skills, how to balance a checkbook. Everyone used them then, but essentially just basic finances, maybe some sewing, ironing, etc. How to run a home more or less. Civics covered how to behave and think like a decent human, why and how you vote, etc. Though what they taught at the time, all of this, understand that life and society was much different. Everyone was supposed to create the perfect nuclear family, and the educational system was stuck in the 50s more or less until STEM and standardized testing became the norm. The education system in America today is disgusting and completely needs to be rethought and overhauled. Thank you for enjoying our video. See you next time. Bye.